In the remote, rugged landscape of Colorado, a fortress of concrete and steel stands ominously, hidden away in Fremont County, south of Florence. This fortress, the renowned ADX Florence, or the Florence Supermax, is the most secure prison in America, designed to be more than just a maximum security prison, but a place where the most dangerous and violent inmates are kept under the strictest control. What is life like in this prison? Who are the dangerous inmates here? Join us on this thrilling episode as we explore inside the worst prison in the United States. The worst prison in the United States. This prison, often called the Alcatraz of the Rockies, is part of the federal correctional complex, Florence, which spans 49 acres of land. Within this complex, different facilities house inmates under varying levels of security, but ADX Florence stands out as the most feared. The prisoners here are confined to their cells for nearly the entire day, locked away in single cells made of poured, reinforced concrete. These cells are designed not just to contain, but to prevent even the possibility of self-harm. The prison operates with a high staff-to-inmate ratio, ensuring 24-hour supervision and control. ADX Florence was born out of necessity. The Federal Bureau of Prisons needed a place to isolate the most violent, uncontrollable inmates, those who posed a constant threat to the lives of staff and other prisoners. The urgency for such a facility became clear on October 22, 1983, when two members of the Aryan Brotherhood, Thomas Silverstein and Clayton Fountain, fatally assaulted correctional officers Merle Klutz and Robert Hoffman at the United States Penitentiary in Marion. These brutal attacks, occurring just hours apart, exposed the flaws in prison design and security. Norman Carlson, the Federal Bureau of Prisons director at the time, proposed a solution. A prison that would lock away the most dangerous individuals, those who had no regard for human life, in a place where they could do no more harm. Under his leadership, USP Marion was put on permanent lockdown, serving as the model for what would become ADX Florence. The construction of ADX Florence was no small feat. Despite the county already housing 9 prisons, the promise of 750 to 900 permanent jobs led the residents to raise $160,000 to buy 600 acres of land for the new facility. The groundbreaking ceremony drew hundreds of people, all witnessing the birth of what would become one of the most infamous prisons in the world. Designed by 2 architecture firms from Colorado Springs, ADX Florence cost $60 million to build and opened its doors on January 10, 1995. What does the home of the most dangerous men in the federal prison system, those whose escape would pose a serious threat to national security, look like? The Alcatraz of the Rockies. Most of ADX Florence sits above ground, but an underground tunnel connects the cell blocks to the lobby. Each cell has a cold concrete desk, a hard stool, and a firm bed. The toilet shuts off if it's blocked, the shower is on a timer to stop flooding, and the sink has a faucet that can't be used as a weapon. Polished steel mirrors are bolted to the wall, and inmates can control the electric lights. They also have a radio and television that offers recreational, educational, and religious programs, along with 50 mainstream channels and Netflix content. The cell windows are tiny, just 4 inches by 4 feet, allowing inmates to see only the sky and the roof. This makes it nearly impossible for them to figure out where they are in the prison. Inmates exercise in a concrete pit that resembles an empty swimming pool, designed to keep them disoriented. The pit is so small that it can only take 10 steps in a straight line, or 31 steps in a circle. Food is usually delivered directly to the cells, but some inmates, who are transferred from other prisons, might get the rare chance to eat in a shared dining room. The prison is packed with motion detectors, cameras, and 1,400 remote-controlled steel doors. Officers in the control center watch the inmates day and night. If they suspect an escape attempt, they can hit a panic button that locks down the entire facility. Pressure pads and 12-foot razor wire fences surround the perimeter and are constantly patrolled by heavily armed officers. ADX Florence has 6 different security levels: general population units, which are also grouped into Delta, Echo, Fox, and Golf, the Special Housing Unit, the Special Security Unit, also known as the H Unit, the Control Unit, Intermediate or Transitional Units, which are known as Kilo and Dzhokhar, and Range 13. Each of these units has a specific purpose. The control unit holds inmates who have committed serious offenses or acts of violence in other prisons, as well as high-ranking members of prison gangs. The H unit is for inmates involved in terror groups or those under special administrative measures. Range 13 is an even more secure area with only 4 cells, meant for inmates requiring the tightest control. The intermediate units house step-down inmates who might be transferred to another prison if they stay out of trouble. This is the only part of ADX where inmates can lock themselves in their cells, move around their range, and interact with other inmates. If they behave well, they might be moved to a less restrictive unit at USP Florence High. In 2007, the Bureau of Prisons allowed the media to tour ADX Florence. Reporters were struck by the astonishing and eerie quiet inside the prison, feeling a strong sense of security due to the strict measures in place. Henry Schuster, a 60 Minutes producer, remarked that just a few minutes inside a cell made him realize how quickly the walls can close in. Unlike other prisons like California's Pelican Bay State Prison, which struggle with overcrowding, low staff-to-inmate ratios, and security problems, ADX Florence has faced less criticism. After a 1998 tour, Jamie Fellner from Human Rights Watch noted that the Bureau of Prisons had effectively implemented a tough penal model. What is it like living there? The extreme conditions in ADX Florence. In 2012, 11 inmates filed a federal class action lawsuit against the Bureau of Prisons in Cunningham versus the Federal Bureau of Prisons. The lawsuit accused the prison of cruel abuse and failure to properly diagnose inmates who were seriously mentally ill. At the time, at least 6 inmates had allegedly taken their own lives. After the lawsuit was filed, a 7th inmate also died by taking his own life, and his case was added to the lawsuit. Critics argue that keeping prisoners in solitary cells for long periods severely damages their mental health. Many studies back up these claims. By March 2015, settlement talks were in progress, led by a federal magistrate, and the Bureau of Prisons had already started making some changes. Inmates held in Unit H are placed under special administrative measures that prevent them from speaking to journalists or even communicating privately with their lawyers or families. In 2012, a British magistrate refused to extradite Julian Assange to the United States on espionage charges, partly because he might be subjected to solitary confinement and special administrative measures at ADX Florence. However, on July 7, 2021, the High Court of Justice for England and Wales allowed the U.S. to appeal this decision with the assurance that Assange will not be subject to SAMs or imprisoned at ADX if extradited. At least 8 inmates have died or are suspected of dying by self-inflicted harm at the facility. The first was 37-year-old Kevin Lee Wilson, who passed away on June 17, 1999. He was serving a 66-year and 10-month sentence. Wilson, a bank robber from Glendale, California, was convicted of multiple counts of armed robbery, carrying a firearm during a crime of violence, and being a felon in possession of a firearm. Next was 43-year-old Gregory Britt, who lost his life on December 9, 1999. He was serving a life sentence after being convicted of fatally assaulting a fellow inmate at the Lorton Correctional Complex in Virginia in 1983. Lawrence Claker passed away on November 18, 2002, at the age of 45. He was serving a life sentence plus 5 years. Claker had been convicted in 1986 for escaping jail in New Orleans, kidnapping a schoolteacher in Alabama, and later becoming an enforcer for the Aryan Brotherhood in federal prison. Lance Vanderstappen, 26th, passed away on April 17, 2006. He was serving a 25-year sentence. Vanderstappen, a member of the Soldiers of Aryan Culture, committed various violent assaults in prison, including violently attacking a fellow inmate in a courthouse holding cell. 35-year-old John Frierson died on May 27, 2008. He was serving 4 consecutive life sentences after going on a shooting spree at 17, taking the lives of his grandparents, brother, and aunt. He was later transferred to ADX after taking the life of a fellow inmate in Mississippi. Jose Martin Vega joined the list on May 1, 2010. He was serving 4 consecutive life sentences plus 190 years. Vega was a gang member from New York, convicted of multiple counts of racketeering and armed drug trafficking. Robert Gerald Knott took his life on September 7, 2013. He was serving a life sentence after being convicted of carrying out a 9-day crime spree across several states in 1988 that included kidnappings and led to the deaths of a hostage and his accomplice. Finally, 42-year-old Jamie Gerald McMahon died on November 13, 2017. He was serving a life sentence after being sentenced alongside his stepbrother for a methamphetamine-induced rampage that included 2 homicides and a bank robbery in Iowa before fleeing to Florida with 2 women. So basically, at a facility known for housing the nation's most dangerous criminals and terrorists, some men ended their suffering by taking their own lives. Others tried but failed, only to face punishment for their attempts. Some mutilated themselves, cutting off body parts, while others lived for months in filth. Before this lawsuit, at least 14 other lawsuits had been filed by ADX Florence prisoners, but each was dismissed before trial. However, this case continued into pre-trial discovery, accompanied by productive private discussions between prison officials, Department of Justice lawyers, and the inmates' attorneys. Most of the original plaintiffs were transferred to other facilities, where they now receive more appropriate care. Men like Jonathan Francisco, who was so severely mentally ill that the BOP transferred him to a more suitable facility in 2013. One of the lead plaintiffs, Harold Cunningham, is serving a life sentence plus 380 years for a series of crimes, including murder. In 1996, during a state trial where he represented himself, he stabbed a witness in open court. Diagnosed as severely mentally ill, Cunningham was taken off his medication upon arrival at ADX Florence in 2001 and placed in the facility's control unit, where prisoners were not allowed to take medication. Years later, he was given a telepsychiatry session while handcuffed and surrounded by correctional officers. Another original plaintiff, John Jack Powers, came to federal prison without any history of mental illness, but went mad behind bars. After witnessing an inmate murder, he was diagnosed with PTSD. His mental illness worsened as he was transferred between facilities, leading him to self-harm. Powers bit off his pinky, yet officials at ADX Florence failed to provide the help he needed. Only when he was transferred to a facility specializing in mental health care did he begin to recover, but he would be sent back to Colorado, starting the cycle of destruction again. Since the lawsuit, the Bureau of Prisons has also implemented confidential spaces for secure mental health consultations and group therapy. The mental health staff at ADX Florence has more than doubled in size since the litigation began. New policies at ADX Florence ensure that arriving prisoners are properly screened by medical professionals to determine if they are mentally ill. Screening will occur before, during, and after the inmate's arrival. If mental illness is detected, the prisoner will either be transferred to a more suitable facility or treated at ADX Florence if their security needs cannot be managed elsewhere. The deal also lifts the ban on prescribing psychotropic medicine in the prison's control unit, ensuring that those who need the most intense treatment for their mental illness will receive it. Achieving this momentous decision wasn't easy. Formal mediation in the case, presided over by Magistrate Judge Michael Hegarty, took hundreds of hours over several years. Tensions became so high at one point that there was a year-long break in negotiations. However, the settlement has received the support of most plaintiffs, who are already seeing its benefits. Who are the inmates currently benefiting from these policies? Zacharias Moussaoui. Born on May 30, 1968, Zacharias Moussaoui is a French member of Al-Qaeda. He admitted in a U.S. federal court that he had conspired to end the lives of American citizens as part of the 9/11 attacks. Moussaoui is now serving life imprisonment without parole at the federal ADX Supermax Prison. He is the only person ever convicted in a U.S. court for the September 11 attacks. He was arrested on August 16, 2001 by the FBI in Minnesota for an immigration violation. His suspicious behavior, including his flight training in Eagan, Minnesota, raised red flags. By December 11, 2001, he was indicted by a federal grand jury on 6 serious charges: conspiring to commit terrorism, hijacking aircraft, destroying aircraft, using weapons of mass destruction, taking the lives of U.S. employees, and destroying property. Federal prosecutors argued that Moussaoui was meant to be the 20th hijacker in the September 11 attacks, possibly replacing Ramzi bin al-Shib. Bin al-Shib and Zacharias Essabar had their visas denied. However, prosecutors struggled to link him directly to the 19 attackers. Moussaoui's trial was closely watched as a measure of how fairly the U.S. handles terrorism suspects. During the trial, he first claimed he was not involved in the 9/11 attacks, but was planning a separate attack. While some al-Qaeda members backed his claim of a different plot, prosecutors dismissed it as unlikely. On April 3, 2006, Moussaoui was deemed eligible for the death penalty. As he left the courtroom, he defiantly shouted, "You will never get my blood. God curse you all." On May 3, 2006, the jury decided against the death penalty. The following day, Moussaoui was sentenced to life in prison without parole. As he was escorted out, he clapped his hands and declared, "America, you lost, I won." Judge Brinkema responded harshly, saying he would die with a whimper and never get a chance to speak again. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. Dzhokhar Dzhokhar Anzorovich Tsarnaev, born on July 22, 1993, is an American terrorist of Chechen and Avar descent. He was responsible for the horrific Boston Marathon bombing. On April 15, 2013, Tsarnaev and his older brother, Tamerlan Tsarnaev, placed deadly pressure cooker bombs near the finish line of the marathon. The bombs exploded, ending the lives of 3 people and injuring 264 others. Just 3 days later, on April 18, 2013, the Tsarnaev brothers carried out another brutal attack. They shot at and fatally injured MIT police officer Sean Collier while in a fierce shootout with the police. Tamerlan was killed, and Dzhokhar, who was injured, still managed to escape. On the night of April 19th, after a massive manhunt by thousands of police officers, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev was found hiding in a boat in a resident's backyard in Watertown, Massachusetts. During questioning, Tsarnaev admitted that he and his brother had planned to attack Times Square in New York City. He also revealed that their actions were partly inspired by Anwar al-Awlaki. Tsarnaev was tried and found guilty of 30 serious charges, was sentenced to death, and is on death row at ADX Florence. Noshir Shariarji Gowadia. In October 2005, authorities questioned Gowadia twice and searched his lavish multi-million-dollar home in Hawaii. Later that month, he was arrested and charged with leaking secret defense information to unauthorized parties. The sensitive information related to the B-2 project was shown to at least 8 foreign countries, revealing details about the B-2's stealth technology. Gowadia confessed to passing on the classified information to boost his reputation with potential clients for future business. After his arrest, Gowadia was held without bail. On October 26, 2005, he was charged in the United States District Court for the District of Hawaii with willfully communicating, delivering, or transmitting national defense information to someone not entitled to receive it, which could harm the U.S. or benefit a foreign nation. On November 8, 2006, a federal grand jury in Honolulu indicted Gowadia on 18 counts. The indictment revealed that Gowadia had secretly designed a stealth cruise missile nozzle for China, making it harder to detect. The indictment accused him of conspiring to break the Arms Export Control Act by agreeing to design and test this stealth technology for China without U.S. approval. It also detailed his 6 trips to China, his secretive emails with co-conspirators, and his covert travel to assist China in developing the stealthy nozzle. Additionally, Gowadia was charged with 3 counts of willfully sharing classified information with Chinese representatives to benefit China and harm the U.S. He also faced 2 counts of unlawfully passing classified information to individuals in China who should not have received it. Furthermore, Gowadia was accused of helping design stealth technology for Chinese missiles and of money laundering. James J. Marcello. On December 15, 1992, federal authorities charged Marcello and notorious mob boss Sam Wings Carlisi with racketeering. Marcello was accused of being Carlisi's underboss, overseeing criminal operations in Chicago's western suburbs. The following year, on December 16, 1993, Marcello, Carlisi, and 5 other crew members were convicted of racketeering. Marcello was particularly found guilty of running illegal bookmaking, street tax, and loan sharking schemes in western Cook County and DuPage County. Both Marcello and Carlisi were also convicted of plotting to end the life of gangland associate Anthony Dadino, who had become a potential informant. Additionally, Marcello was convicted of funding mobster Lenny Patrick's loan sharking business and ordering a firebomb attack on the Lake Theater in Oak Park during a labor dispute. On April 5, 1995, Marcello was sentenced to 12.5 years in prison. In a defiant statement, he told Judge Paul Plunkett, "If my name wasn't James Marcello, I wouldn't be standing in front of you. That's all I have to say," as reported by the Chicago Tribune on April 6, 1995. Marcello was released from a federal prison camp in Milan, Michigan, on November 2003 and returned to his home in Lombard, Illinois. After his release, he started working for DVD Management, a nursing home operator in Oakbrook Terrace, Illinois. But then the family secrets trial began. Marcello and his younger half-brother, Michael Mickey, faced murder and racketeering charges. Marcello was accused of several murders, including Nicholas D'Andrea in 1981, Nicholas Cirillo Sr. in 1982, and the notorious Spilatro brothers in 1986. The indictment also alleged that the Marcellos ran a profitable video gambling business called M&M Amusement from 1996 to 2004. Shortly after his indictment, Marcello tried to secure his release on bond by offering properties worth $12.5 million, including several high-value homes. However, on April 29, 2005, U.S. District Judge James Zagel denied his request. In September 2007, Marcello was convicted of racketeering conspiracy, involving years of extortion, loan sharking, and murder. On February 5, 2009, he was sentenced to life in prison for the Spilotro murders. Judge Zagel, while acknowledging Marcello's potential, expressed regret that he had not led a better life and sentenced him to life behind bars. Immediately after his sentencing, Marcello was sent to the high-security United States Penitentiary in Atwater, California. However, due to ongoing appeals, he was returned to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago. Despite Marcello's appeals being nearly exhausted, the federal government attempted to transfer him back to Atwater in February 2012, but Judge Zagel intervened, insisting Marcello remain in Chicago until his appeal was resolved. Marcello is now imprisoned at the ADX Florence Supermax Prison in Colorado. Ramzi Ahmed Yousef. On September 1, 1992, Yousef arrived in the United States with an Iraqi passport of questionable authenticity. His companion, Ahmed Ajaj, carried several fake documents, including a poorly forged Swedish passport. To distract officials and help Yousef get through, Ajaj was immediately arrested when immigration officers discovered bomb-making manuals, videos of extremists, and a cheat sheet lying to inspectors in his luggage. Investigators later linked their travel to a call from Sheikh Omar Abdelrahman, a militant preacher from Egypt. Yousef was detained for 72 hours and questioned repeatedly, but due to overcrowding, he was given a hearing date of November 9, 1992, for his asylum request. Claiming to be Abdul Basit Mahmoud Abdul Karim from Pakistan, he said he lost his passport. On December 31, 1992, the Pakistani consulate in New York issued a temporary passport to this alias. While moving around New York and New Jersey, Yousef stayed in contact with Abdel Rahman using a cell phone. Between December 3 and 27, 1992, he made conference calls to key numbers in Balochistan, Pakistan. Ajaj never reclaimed the bomb manuals and tapes, which stayed at the FBI's New York office after they were released by Judge Reena Raghi in December 1992. Yousef, along with Mohammed Salame and Mahmoud Abu Halima, began assembling a massive 1,500-pound bomb in his Jersey City home. He ordered chemicals while recovering from a car accident caused by Salame. On December 29, 1992, Ajaj warned Yousef that picking up the manuals might endanger his business. One book Ajaj carried was later identified by the FBI as having the word Al-Qaeda meaning the base. In a 2002 interview, co-conspirator Abdul Rahman Yassin revealed that Yousef initially planned to attack Jewish neighborhoods in New York City, but changed his mind after visiting Crown Heights and Williamsburg. Yassin also said Yousef received bomb-making training in a camp in Peshawar, Pakistan. On February 26, 1993, Yousef rented a Ryder van and packed it with explosives. He loaded 4 cardboard boxes filled with paper bags, newspapers, urea, and nitric acid, and placed 3 red metal cylinders of compressed hydrogen, along with 4 large containers of nitroglycerin and blasting caps, into the van. The van was driven into the garage of the World Trade Center, where it exploded. Yousef escaped the U.S. hours later, reportedly fleeing to Iraq and then Pakistan. The FBI added him to its 10 most wanted fugitives list on April 21, 1993. Back in Pakistan, Yousef went into hiding. That summer, he allegedly tried to assassinate Pakistani Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto, but the plot failed when police intervened. Yousef fled, and the bomb he was handling exploded prematurely. On December 11, 1994, Yousef carried out a trial run by boarding Philippine Airlines Flight 434 from Manila to Tokyo, with a stop in Cebu. Using a forged Italian passport, he assembled a bomb in the airplane's lavatory and set it to detonate in 4 hours. Although the bomb exploded while the plane was flying over Japan, it only killed 1 passenger, Haruki Ikegami, and injured 10 others. The explosion caused damage, but did not destroy the aircraft, which made an emergency landing in Okinawa. The plane became a crime scene, and investigators traced the clues back to Manila. Returning to Manila, Yousef prepared more bombs, but a fire in his apartment led to a police raid. They discovered plans for attacks, including a plot to crash planes into CIA headquarters. Authorities were alert, and the Federal Aviation Administration warned airlines. After the Iranian shrine bombing, Yousef began planning the Bojinka plot, which included attempts to assassinate Pope John Paul II and bomb several flights. Despite a global manhunt, Yousef escaped to Pakistan. On January 31, 1995, he flew from Pakistan to Thailand and met with associate Istaiq Parker, instructing him to check bombs on Delta Airlines and United Airlines flights. Parker, too frightened to follow through, returned to Yousef's hotel and falsely claimed it was too risky. Yousef wanted to get bombs onto a plane flying to the U.S., so he contacted a friend with diplomatic immunity in Qatar. This friend agreed to take the suitcases to London and then check them onto a flight to the U.S. The plan was for the bombs to explode mid-flight and destroy the plane. Yousef hoped the friend's immunity would ensure the suitcases would be loaded onto the plane. According to Simon Reeves' book, The New Jackals, the friend's name is not known, but his father was a high-ranking politician in Qatar. At that time, Yousef's uncle, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, was staying in Qatar with a Qatari official. However, the suitcases were never checked in. Yousef and Parker returned to Pakistan on February 2, 1995. Following a tip from Istaiq Parker, on February 7, 1995, Pakistani and U.S. agents raided Room 16 at the Sukasa guest house in Islamabad. They captured Yousef before he could move to Peshawar. Parker was later paid $2 million for providing the information that led to Yousef's capture. During the raid, agents found flight schedules for Delta and United Airlines and bomb parts hidden in children's toys. Yousef had chemical burns on his fingers. He was sent to a federal prison in New York City until his trial. On September 5, 1996, Yousef and 2 accomplices were convicted for their roles in the Bojinka plot and were sentenced to life in prison without parole by U.S. District Court Judge Kevin Duffy. On November 12, 1997, Yousef was found guilty of masterminding the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. On January 8, 1998, Judge Duffy sentenced Yousef to life in prison plus 40 years for both bombings and recommended that he be kept in solitary confinement. Yousef is currently held at the high-security Supermax Prison, ADX Florence, in Florence, Colorado. The handcuffs he wore when captured are displayed at the FBI Museum in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.